Can sustainable investing save the world? Probably not alone. We'll come back to this. But it can have an impact. What's that, you ask?
Impact is a change in a certain parameter of interest, for example, clean drinking water, that is caused by your activities.
Impact is thus defined as the difference between status quo and additional performance resulting from an action.
So we define company impact, which is the effect the company has on the world, and investor impact, which is kind of the change in company impact and investor causes.
But how can we measure this? This is where ESG ratings come into play.
ESG is generally about what do companies do with regard to the environment, social issues, governance issues.
Oh, Julian Kulbel and Florian Heb are researchers at the Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth in Zurich. They published a research paper on sustainable investing. The link is in the description. ESG is often complemented nowadays with a focus on Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs. Now, if sustainable investing wants to change the world, it can play on 3 levers. Number 1,
grow green companies.
Sometimes companies, especially in developing markets, have a problem to tap into capital.
They may do a lot of good things though, and they would keep doing it if an external hand was to help them to grow. Hence, sustainable investing's first lever offer those companies better access to capital.
But that's also the classic impact investing space.
Number 2,
Make brown companies greener.
these companies are typically a tad larger than the former ones. They have access to capital and investors can only marginally impact their growth.
Is there shareholder engagement, so really entering into a dialogue with top management on how their environmental policy should look like. There's voting. Every shareholder in most countries can vote on shareholder resolutions.
For instance, Gaulier and Pouget in 2014 showed that 8% of investors pushing into the same sustainable direction may incentivize the new technologies required to mitigate climate change.
These are all theoretical models. The question is what happens in the real world, and what I find striking is, if you look at the real world, Switzerland just had a market report on sustainable finance. 50% of all the funds apply some sustainability strategies in their investment process. If you look at that, you would assume that we're already far above, this 8%, but somehow we still don't see the change needed to reach the SDGs or solve climate change.
Why? Because let's be realistic as well. The cost of change for a company may be much higher than the impact of sustainable investing on its stock price.
I'm not sure how does this incentive really work, especially for the big ticket. It's more on the small improvements.
For the big ticket impact, sustainable investors shall rather focus on the third lever, number 3.
Activism.
Sustainable investing cannot stop climate change on its own. It can help, but not on its own. There are some issues that require political change.
Yet, investors can leverage a range of indirect impacts to ignite transformation, such as stigmatization, endorsement, benchmarking, or demonstration.
If the University of Cambridge, for instance, says, okay, we're out of oil, it's also a political message. It sort of moves the goalpost. So it's not a crackpot idea anymore to say, well, the future is going to be very different.
Looking at the science, we know that we all would be better off in 30, 50 years if we have tough regulation now.
This leaves us with a closing question. What do you think? Is lobbying for good still an underused power of sustainable finance? Have a look at this video to figure it out. And if you'd like to dive deeper into the topic of sustainable investing, the link to my full interview with Florian and Julian is in the description.